My name is Sister Patricia Reagan, and I'm a member of the Congregation of Divine Providence. I am currently the president of the board of the Socially Responsible Investment Coalition. I wish to welcome you to SRIC's 2024 annual educational event. This year's program entitled Sow, Grow, Thrive, Empowering Communities Through Sustainable Food Production and Providing Access to Healthy Food will focus on understanding and addressing the intersections of structural racism, nutrition insecurity, and health disparities to pave the way toward a more just food system. Our distinguished guest speakers bring a wealth of experience and insight to this crucial conversation, and I hope you enjoy the program. And now I invite Sister Susan Mika to the podium to make a presentation.
Welcome to everyone. Before we start the program, we're going to present SRIC's Citizen Advocate Excellent Award. And I'll ask you to look in your booklets that it's the second page there that lists what we're doing for this evening. We're very, very excited. Sister Elizabeth is with us. She received this award last year. She can wave. Sister Elizabeth is right here, wave. And so this year, Father Séamus Finn, Oblate of Mary Immaculate, was chosen as the person to receive this SRIC Citizen Advocate Excellent Award. We have to report that he's been a little bit under the weather and in the hospital, and his doctors would not allow him to travel. So we have been speaking with him back and forth, and he wishes all of us well and sends greetings. You know, he's been with us, I think, every year for the last about 11 years at least, as helping with the program and all of that. And we have a little short bio in the program. I'm not going to try to read all of it because that'll take all the time. But you can see from that he's very well respected around the world, not just in the Oblate world or in the socially responsible investment world, but in many, many, many areas, and travels incessantly and speaks in so many ways on social justice and especially on corporate responsibility. And in here, you can see all of the different TV channels and different areas, even Al Jazeera America, interviewing him for various topics, and very much has led so much work on climate and banks and, you know, just credit and so many of the different areas that we work on together in our national, international fields there. So we're sorry that he isn't able to be with us, but we are sending him blessings. We're sending him good vibes, and we're wishing and prayers for full health, return to full health. And we are taping tonight's program, so he will be able to see this part. And he asked Father Rufus Whitley, one of his very good friends, to come and receive the award on his behalf and maybe say a little bit. And then we're also honoring some of the oblates. Oblates tonight, and we'll have that next after this. So, Father Rufus.
Just so you see, it has his name on it, so I will make sure he gets it. And he will be very proud that you all got the accent on the E, because he's been after me that for years. Séamus does not trust me ever to speak on his behalf for a lot of good reasons. I have a great talent for putting words into other people's mouth that they may not have wanted to say. So I asked him to send me something that he would like to be conveyed. And so what I'm going to read is actually from Séamus, and then I'll add a couple of comments at the end. And the first is the announcement about his physical situation. And it says very simply, Father Séamus has been absent for the past several weeks due to a mild stroke. He is in good spirits and hopes to return later in June or July as his vision and mobility improves. He is currently at home with his religious community, the Oblates of Mary Immaculate. Please keep him in your prayers as he continues to recover. Yeah. That was the statement that was released at the parish that he works at occasionally, St. Elizabeth's, which is located in Maryland. I can tell you that when I read that, it sounds worse than it is. He's suffered no discernible physical manifestation from the stroke. His speech is clear, full mobility, no paralysis. It's just that the doctors do not want him to travel, and they've got him doing some physical therapy. The way I would describe it in talking to people who live with him in Washington and who've seen him, if you didn't know he'd had a mild stroke, you wouldn't know it just when you ran into him. So as I said, we all wish him well, and I'm not trying to downplay it, but I also want to convey that it's not we were lucky. Let me just leave it that way. Here is what he asked me to convey to you. For well over 50 years, interfaith communities in the United States have endeavored to make justice a cornerstone of their ministries. And this has included how they administer the fixed and liquid assets that are in their care for the accomplishment of their mission. The pioneers who wanted this priority to be integrated into the way in which they exercised responsible ownership of shares in companies left no stone unturned in identifying the tools and the avenues whereby this could be accomplished. Learning and building from their insights, the socially and environmentally responsible movement spread throughout the United States in the last half of the 20th century. It was a movement that depended very much on collaboration and trust cooperation, whereby strategies were tested and implemented to bring the priority of justice into the marketplace and into the minds of corporate leaders. The Oblates represented here, and then I'll put in a comma, very especially Séamus, comma, were very much on the forefront of bringing this priority and these strategies to the Southwest, and have continued to be strong supporters of these efforts with many other religious and faith communities in the intervening decades. As we celebrate the 30th anniversary of the dismantling of apartheid, it gives us an opportunity to reflect and celebrate the milestones that mark the journey. The work is still centered on social and environmentally responsibility as we recognize the preservation of our common home for generations into the future. As we continue this important work, which has been entrusted to us, we invite others to join in this task. Let us resolve to leave no stone unturned as we strive to build communities that are sustainable and inclusive. That was what he wished to share with you. And on a very personal note, Séamus was born on November 18th, 1949, for those of you who don't know. I can remember it because it's also the same day as my father's birthday. It's the only reason I could remember that. And I was born on December 6th of that same year. So Séamus is obviously more mature, has more wisdom, and has led the way. And I say that because as a person who has worked with Séamus and at times pulled my hair out because he and I have a very different work style. Mine tends to reflect the Protestant ethic in the Irish flow with the wind method. It's really Séamus, I hope you really don't listen to this. You may never go out for supper with me again. No, I can easily say with deep respect, the honor that this group has chosen to give him is a well-deserved honor. He's certainly been a trailblazer with an insight and vision and wisdom and courage, sometimes through some very difficult times, to get us to a point that actually puts before us a newer challenge. That I'll say this gently, he and I are hitting our 75th year of life, and one begins to look behind you and wonder about the continuation of the many good things that this group and so many other groups have accomplished. And I think his prayer and challenge for all of us today would be to focus on the generation that will follow us. Hopefully they will share a similar passion, a similar vision, probably do it in a different way, which is inevitable, but that the basic and fundamental and underlying commitment to passing on to those who follow us a world that is more just, more compassionate, more tolerant, and really brings to life the great moral principle that we are stewards of what we have, not owners. So on behalf of Séamus, I want to thank you, and I fully suspect that next year he will be here and be able to rebut everything I have just said to bring a correction. Thank you very much.
Yes. And I'd like to call up also Bishop Pfeifer and Father Warren Brown. When we envisioned this, we said Séamus and the Oblates of Mary Immaculate, and these three persons have been very involved with the Socially Responsible Investment Coalition over all these years. And Anna, our executive director, had asked them to each write a little paragraph about themselves. If I read that, they wouldn't have any time to speak. But I just want to say something, just a little bit about each one. And then Anna had asked if they wanted to say something for themselves as well. So just to say, Father Rufus, he's been with SRIC since the beginning. He was on the first executive committee and worked with groups in 1981, along with a lot of the treasurers that you can name from your monastery or your community that were in office at that time, and meeting in various places to try to found this group. And we always tell the story that Sister Frances Lorene Lang was the one that in 1975 tried with Father Mike Crosby to start us, but for whatever reason, it didn't take. But this group then in 1981 was meeting and founded us in 1982. And of course, Father Rufus has many, many accomplishments. And I hope that we will publish all of these in the monthly update that SRIC does. So I'm just going to say something about each one. And then if you want to, get up and say something in rebuttal. So Bishop Pfeifer, you have come to, I think, every SRIC event that we've ever had. When you're here in San Antonio, I know, he was the bishop in San Angelo for many, many years. And when they could, they also participated in SRIC, very much so. And he always tells the story that he was the very first one when they asked who was going to be all in to start this group. He says he stood up and said the Oblates are in. So I always tell that story because I think it's very, very important, that you stood up and said, we're going to be with you. Father Warren, oh goodness, you've had such a life history too, and you've been our executive director of SRIC, and you have in here 1993 to 1995. All the years of SRIC are crucial, and those were very crucial years keeping the organization going. And then, when you were teaching at school here and doing so many other things too, and then you sort of paved the way for some of our other executive directors, Mike Hess, Jim Donovan, at coming after you, leading us, in with their gifts and talents. So, and oftentimes when we talk to you before you got off the general council of the Oblates, you were always answering us from, I don't know, some country around the earth. So you've done so much traveling and everything, and now you're back here and, kind of reconnecting with us again. So very, very awesome. So let's just give them a big hand. And
I'm smoking enough.
Okay.
Go on.
All right, we can sit down.
Good evening. Buenas noches. I saw on the schedule that one of the themes is food justice. I think we did pretty well justice to the food that was here So I want to thank the members of SRIC for preparing such a wonderful evening and for the constant good things they have done going back over 40 years. Being here this evening reminds me of about 42 years ago when I was provincial of the Oblates of Mary Immaculate, the Southern Province, and I hosted the first meeting of what we call SRIC today. And yes, the Oblates were in, they're still in, stay in, yes. And the first thing I want to do is to express gratitude to so many people over the 40 years who have done so much for this beautiful ministry that's so important for our church today. As I look at what needs to be done after my 60 years of being a priest and 40 as a bishop, I think the constant struggle is to bring together the two great tables, the Eucharistic table with the table of social justice. Yes, we go to the Eucharistic table, but very often we don't make the connection or take it to the next table, which is the table of life, especially around social issues. There's an abundant, I could name item after item on that list. So I encourage you, yes, it's the Eucharist that gives the inspiration, that gives us the grace. But more and more, we need to take that into or to the table of social justice, where we have so many struggling people, our brothers and sisters. So tonight is a night to thank the good Lord for our blessings, but to renew our service for God's people with the Holy Spirit. And this is a ministry of evangelization. It's bringing the gospel alive in our society. When I hear the word evangelization, it reminds me of the great document of Paul VI, now St. Paul VI, Evangelii Nuntiandi, and there were two principles that stand out in that document that I remember. Number one, he said, All evangelization begins with the Holy Spirit. That's the power Christ has given us. And sadly, I don't think we bishops also use that power the way we should or could in our society. The other principle he laid down was the first one to be evangelized is the evangelizer. And more, I think we need to be conscious of that. When we deal with people who don't think like us, people who don't have the means that we have to put ourselves in their shoes. We have to understand them better so that we can also learn from them as they learn from us, and then we evangelize together. So I just want to encourage you to keep those two principles in mind. And to conclude, I'd like to tell you about 4 people who are looking at a job. The title is, Whose Job Is It? Have you heard this before? Yes? Okay. Or no? Oh, no. Okay. Well, this is a story about 4 people named Everybody, Somebody, Anybody, and Nobody. Now, this doesn't apply to SRIC, by the way. But there was an important job to be done, and everybody was sure somebody would do it. Sounds familiar? Anybody could have done it, but nobody did it. Somebody got angry about that because it was everybody's job. Everybody thought anybody could do it, but nobody realized that everybody wouldn't do it. It ended up that everybody blamed somebody when nobody did what anybody could have done. Now, that doesn't apply to SRIC, but maybe some of our other ministries. God bless you and keep up the wonderful effort you have as far as bringing justice into our world, and stay close to the Holy Spirit. God bless you.
Well, thank you very much. Just a few personal remarks. I came here to work as executive director after having been in Brownsville at the cathedral in Brownsville, which is about 4 blocks from the bridge to Mexico. And it was a very tiring and very stressful job. So I really was looking forward to doing something. We were putting Band-Aids on a lot of people and their problems, but I wanted to work in a place where we'd be working on the systems and trying to deal with justice on a larger scale. Those were the years that we had, similar to today, but in a different way. We had many people coming across the border from Central America during the wars in Nicaragua and El Salvador, a lot of people from Honduras. And it was a very, very trying time. But I found here, working at what we called in those days Texas Cry, such a wonderful community. And I was thinking of some of those names of those people, and I thought I would mention some of those tonight just to remember. Some of them have passed on, but they were people very instrumental in my life and my work here. Sister Imelda Gonzalez is the one that really invited me and helped me come here, and I really appreciated Imelda's help. And of course, Susan Mika, we did a lot of work together. One of the things that I really enjoyed working on is those were the years we really worked on the maquiladoras. And those are very much the reality along the border, and I was very familiar with the border. Sister Gabriela Lohan with the Holy Spirit Sisters, she was also very good support, and we had a lot of fun times, a lot of good laughs, maybe more than we should have sometimes, but anyway. And Sister Barbara Ayers, she came from Sisters of Charity up in New Jersey. She was working at Villa Mattel in Houston. And Sister John Marie, the treasurer of the Sisters of Incarnate Word at Villa Mattel in Houston. They really were very supportive and really learned a lot from them. And Brother Tom Kreider, the Holy Cross Brothers from Austin, was a very kind of helped to keep everything balanced and moving along. I really appreciated so much my predecessor, Ms. Linda Southers. Linda was a great mentor. And after she finished her work here, she went on to study psychology and became a therapist. So I guess this is what this work led her to do. And of course, the Oblates, Séamus was a big help, and also Rufus. And Father Ray John Marek, who was a young Oblate, he was starting to learn a little bit about a lot of this work. So thank you very much. We have a great heritage, a lot of really great people that have been working together. And that's really, I think, the success of this group is how well we've been able to work together. Thank you.
Thank y'all so much. And Rufus was saying I should mention Father Tom Burns. He was a Spiritan priest that he also worked with Rufus. They were part, we had the executive committee, Rufus, Tom Byrne, Brigida Smiley, John Canty, and one other person. Anyway, they got us started. So, you know, and went to some of those early meetings. So anyway, we want to just thank the Oblates for all these years being with us and doing everything that, you know, they did to help us, because, you know, that's what it takes, that perseverance. So thank you so much.
And we need to thank this good lady here, who was one of the main instruments to make all of this happen. Let's give her a big, big applause.
Gosh, it's so great to look out and see all these great people out in the audience. I'm Anna Falkenberg. I'm privileged to be the executive director of SRIC. And I'm just here this evening to do a brief update about our work. We so often in these wonderful programs don't have a chance to tell you some things that we are doing on your behalf, actually. So again, I want to thank you all for joining us. It's a busy time in San Antonio, and there might have been other attractions, but we're glad you picked us this evening. We work on here at SRIC. It's Ruben Lopez and me, actually. He's the team. He's back working to record the event. And we do the work that allows you to express yourself through your shares as shareholders to companies. And we do this with global colleagues. We don't do this just by ourselves. We have people all over the world now, and special colleagues at ICCR, which we are a part of, to do this work and to do work on food justice. But first, as you know, we have been around for 40 years doing shareholder advocacy for our members who want to create justice and peace through corporate responsibility. We've been supported by you all and led by these bold and visionary missionary oblates that we've recognized this evening. Certainly Séamus. But this year, it's been 40 years now, for the first time, we have faced threats from those who disparage ESG investing, that's environmental, social, and governance mechanisms to gauge your investments by. And these same people want to disable the whole shareholder process, which is our work of having dialogues with companies, filing resolutions, voting your proxies. This is a threat because you are using your voices to speak to corporate power. And right now, there's a lawsuit actually, and from our friends, I guess I should say, or our people that we have worked with in the past, Exxon, a lawsuit against those shareholders who are asking that company to consider climate-related risks in their business model. This is a first. We've been talking to them a while. They don't always listen, but this is a first to have a lawsuit slammed on our fellow shareholders. In addition, there have been continued attacks on our work promoting racial justice and diversity, equity, and inclusion. It's not easy out there, and we've become targets for doing the good work, doing the right thing. Despite these attacks, we shareholders continue to address all the critical issues on climate, environmental justice, corporate lobbying, human rights, health equity, equitable global supply chains, digital rights, and worker justice. And we do this all through asking for corporate accountability. You know, as a corporation, you actually have a contract, a social contract to not only do your work, but to serve the community. But food justice, so that's what we're going to talk about tonight. That's one of them. That's a relatively small area of our work nationally, but it's a very important one. And we work in several sectors to advance. Really, the big piece of this is worker justice. Worker justice for those who produce and prepare our food. We've worked with and about workers in the meat and poultry processing plants of Tyson Foods. We're working with Hershey Company on child labor involved in processing cocoa. We have supported the movement for freedom of association at Starbucks. Have you heard about the strikes, the workers' strikes? And we're starting a new advocacy area for a living wage, not minimum wage, a living wage at Walmart, Amazon, Chipotle, and other companies. This is a really bold step. It's a really hard sell, but it's an important one, isn't it? To have workers be able to live on the money that they make being employed in companies. We've been requesting audits for food equity and racial justice from 11 major food producers. I could name them all, but for time, I'm just going to say it goes from Campbell Foods all the way to Unilever, the biggest companies in the world, Nestle, Kellogg, General Mills, etc. Asking them to look at racial justice in their companies. One of the big pieces of work we all do, and you're most familiar with, is the resolutions that we submit to companies as part of the proxy process. You know, a legal process that's mandated through the SEC. In the last proxy resolution season, that was 2023, we asked companies about some of these things. Deforestation in their supply chains at Cheesecake Factory, Pilgrim's Pride, Papa John's, and Texas Roadhouse. Why deforestation? Well, just think of all that food packaging, right? That means cutting down trees for a big part. So there's many other issues like this. And one I really need to mention here is we also have to thank Sister Susan for her long time work with McDonald's. Yes. On removing certain antibiotics in their meat and poultry supply chains. Made a lot of progress here. Hasn't been easy. And so those are some of the examples of the kind of work we do with companies directly, resolutions, working with all kinds of topics, actually, but really for now focusing a lot on worker justice. We can all celebrate. Well, that's hard work, and it's not always easy wins, and it's not always wins. It's a long-term project often to get these companies to realize what they need to do on behalf of their owners, shareholders, right? And so there's some things we can celebrate. Right now, we can all celebrate pending federal legislation to reduce childhood obesity and diabetes fueled by the food and beverage industry, along with a federal ban on junk food advertising to children. This is progress, folks. And we're looking at companies, I say we're looking at you because I worked with General Mills. We're looking at you, General Mills, for pushing Cocoa Puffs and Lucky Charms to children instead of healthier options. So the federal legislation, which is pending, is a great step in calling, I think, calling these people to the fore, the food and beverage companies that create food that is not healthy and that continue to push it to all of us, and in particular children. Well, that's an achievement. We hope it comes to pass. There's no rest for the weary, though. Now on our radar, I just read about this, and we're looking at it in our nutrition insecurity group of members. There's new research on Lunchables. Know what that is? Lunchables produced by Kraft Heinz and sold to many school districts for school lunches. It's one thing, but researchers have found high amounts of lead and excess sodium in excess already, but it's higher in the Lunchables that they're selling cafeterias to feed children than in the commercial products. Can you believe that? Children's little bodies taking in more sodium than an adult who would buy Lunchables. It's really a crime, we think, and something we're going to definitely address that company with. Why? Why, what's the thinking? Well, we know what they'll say. It's for taste. Everybody wants it to taste good, so we have to add sugar and sodium, but I won't go there. But that is astonishing, isn't it? A small thing like that a company can get by with. And as we say, this is being sold to cafeterias. I don't know about locally, but it's not a very healthy lunch to begin with. So we're going to look at this. So this has just been a taste of our collaborative work with companies to advance food justice. And now we have a chance to look forward with optimism and hope to hear how our speakers this evening are working to create food justice for all. So it's now my honor to introduce our program moderator, Sister Elizabeth we all know Sister Elizabeth. Known, known for her heroic work in environmental justice in our state, right? She's also the first recipient of our Citizen Advocate Excellence Award last year, and that we, of course, just gave this year to Séamus, Father Séamus. So join us and speakers as well.
Yes, thank you. Anna, I hope that my advocacy did not make Exxon mad at us. You know, Exxon has this huge, big ethane cracker plant just north of Corpus. It's the largest in the world. I won't go into the history of how that got there, but I would say link Rex Tillerson, Secretary of State, the Saudi prince, with Donald Trump's first foreign trip to Saudi Arabia, where he was wined and dined. Then he comes back and announces this big deal within Exxon and the Crown Prince. That's all I'll say about that. But just put two and two together. This is the way some of these things happen. So thank you very much, Anna. Let's give Anna a great round of applause for that tremendous work she's doing. All I can say is when you have the big boys come sue you, you must be making a dent in their world. So wear it as a badge of honor. We do God's work on earth, so good luck with that in the lawsuit. So I'd like to recall in setting the tone for this wonderful panel, I think of three things, and I hope Bishop Pfeifer, if I'm wrong about the scriptures quote, apologize. But I think it's John 3:10, when Jesus specifies the very goal of his mission. I have come that they might have life and have it to the fullest. He didn't say, I've come to save souls. Life to the fullest. And then I think of St. Irenaeus, one of the first bishops and martyrs of the early church. The glory of God is a human person fully alive. Think about what it takes for a human being to be fully alive. A sound mind, a sound soul, and a sound body. We always hear that. So we are incarnational reality as individuals and as church. So the health of the body is essential to our spiritual health. We look around us today, we look at the news reports and we see so much suffering, so much pain in Gaza and Sudan and around the world. People being displaced because of sea level rise, because of climate disasters, because of droughts, etc. You all know the story as well as I do. And so we see people, desperate people, doing desperate things. And when somebody complains about the rush of migrants to the border and seeing them risking their lives, swimming the river, dying in the process, and they criticize them. How could they do this? Why don't they stay where they want to be, at home? They just want up here for free handouts. They don't know immigrants if they've never met one. And I say, you know, Jesus has said, I'm coming for relief. Please do not turn me down. Welcome them. But most of all, address the causes for why they're coming. Know why they're coming. That's so important for us to bear witness to that on their behalf, because migrants and immigrants who suffer are powerless, they have no voice, and they're suffering, and they're begging for relief at our hands. So I think it suggests that we bear witness to those needs for those. And so God sent prophets to warn us and to direct us. And we have prophets among us today who are calling our attention to what we need to be about. John Paul II said, the day it would seem that the time has come when the materialistic consumerism of the West will be a worse problem for the church than communism ever was. He said that towards the end of his life, having spent his early years behind the Iron Curtain, fighting communism, and now coming and confronting the West. It was a culture shock for him. but he absorbed it and he learned from it, and then he's prophetized to us what our work is. And so we thank God for the prophets among us. We've heard the stories of some of the local prophets tonight, those that began the Socially Responsible Investment Coalition and those who carry the work on as a voice for the organization. And so this evening, we're fortunate to have with us three visionaries. Prophets not only envision the future, they also speak to what the presence is about. They bring the light of God's vision to the present so that we begin to see with the eyes of God and the eyes of faith, and that's a much different vision than the materialistic consumerism of our culture. And so they walk among us, and they're here to tell their stories of their journey with the pilgrims journeying for survival, and to help point the way in which we live, investors rooted in our faith and in our awareness of our responsibility to support our common journey with them to the kingdom of God on earth, where all tears can be wiped away, and all those who hunger for justice, who hunger for food, who hunger for sustenance, and who hunger for that fullness of life that Jesus came to bring us and to show us a way to. And so let us welcome Deacon Jean Festo, Mitch Hagney, and Dr. Ricardo Gonzalez. You have their bios in your program, and you see they come very well prepared out of vision, out of faith, and out of experience to share their stories with us tonight. So let us welcome them with gratitude. Please come forward. Our speakers, come forward, please. And I want to call attention to the fact that you have on your tables cards and pens or pencils. I get it, thank you. Okay, yes. Thank you. So you have cards and pencils on your table. During the presentations, some questions may come to mind or some comments. I would suggest that while it's fresh, grab a card, write it down, because you may forget it at the end of the speaker's session. So then we will collect the cards and they will respond as they choose to do so. Thank you.
Thank you, Sister Elizabeth. I have to say, you're pretty eloquent. I want to know where you're doing your homily next Sunday. Wow. She ought to be. That was wonderful. Thank you. I'm Gene Festa. I am a deacon. I'll be a deacon 43 years next month. That's right. They used to ordain teenagers. And I was pretty young. They don't even ordain them that young anymore. And I've been in several parishes, not too many parishes. And part of the work that I think I've enjoyed quite a bit has been in the last 8 or 9 years when I became a global fellow with Catholic Relief Services. And it's a passion of mine. So a global fellow is a group of deacons and priests all through the country who go around speaking about Catholic Relief Services. We preach about it, we teach about it, we talk about it anywhere anybody will listen to us. I've talked to little bitty kids in grade school. I've talked to high school classes. I went to a high school youth conference once. I've preached, of course, about it and taught classes. And anytime anybody calls and says, "Do you want to come?" I go, "Oh, yes." And then I say, "What is it?" I always say yes, because it's a very important thing for me to talk about it. I don't know what you know about Catholic Relief Services. Perhaps you know that every year around the 5th Sunday of Lent, you're supposed to give money. I hope you did this year, because that's the only time they ever really collect money for Catholic Relief Services. Catholic Relief Services goes back to 1943. It was founded as a assistance for war refugees, and it's developed quite a bit in these 81 years. and to now at a point where it has a headquarters in Baltimore, Maryland, in a remodeled department store downtown on Lexington Street. And it's in over 100 countries in 5 continents. It's has served nearly 130 million people or more. It's more every day. There are about 7,000 people that work for CRS, and of them, 2,000 of them are called partners, which means they're people from the various countries that CRS trains, and they actually work with the people from their countries. Perhaps to understand what CRS is, and I'll tell you a little bit about their hunger initiative in a minute, you could look at their mission statement, because it's something that's very important to know, that they are carrying out the commitment of the United States bishops to assist the poor and the vulnerable overseas. So this is a ministry, this is work overseas. They are motivated by the gospel of Jesus Christ. And they have on all their brochures, I brought one of them with me, you have a little kind of a motto that everywhere you see called Faith, Action, Results. Like this organization. Based on faith, we take action to get results. It's nice to talk about things, isn't it? But you know that I'm talking to the workers here, people. If you don't do something, then it's not worth it, is it? You don't get any results. So that's what they do, to preserve and uphold. This work is done to preserve and uphold the sacredness and dignity of human life, to foster charity and justice, and embody Catholic social teachings in their work. And they want to promote integral human development, the development of the whole person. It's very important that they do that, to respond to major emergencies, to fight injustices, to fight disease and poverty, and nurture peaceful and just societies. And you know, I talked about they work overseas, but they also serve Catholics in the United States, like us here, by educating people and promoting them getting involved somehow in the work of Catholic Relief Services. So that's a little bit about the official humanitarian, international humanitarian agency of the U.S. Catholic Church, Catholic Relief Services, or CRS. They have many programs, and they kind of fall under 3 categories: emergency response, agricultural livelihoods, and health and human services. Now, we global fellows, I said, we go around and talk, but every once in a while they offer to us to go overseas to a country where CRS is working and to see what's going on. Not so much to work there, but to see what happens, how all of this works together, and then come back here and tell stories. So a few years ago, I went to Uganda, and I had never been there. I almost had to look on a map to see where it was. And it's in the eastern part of Africa. It's tiny, really. It's small, and it's right on the equator. And I said, how interesting, I'm going to the equator. And so I went to Uganda, and there I learned about these 3 areas: emergency response, agricultural livelihoods, and health and human services. And you know what, folks? Tonight we're supposed to talk about hunger and justice for, hunger. It's amazing how these 3 areas, that hunger kind of is an umbrella over all of that. So much so that recently, in the last few years, CRS dedicated that as a theme: ending hunger and malnutrition in the world. That's an umbrella over what they're doing. So for example, emergency responses. When there's an emergency in the world, CRS is going to be there. They will be there. Is there a hurricane, a typhoon? Is there flooding? They will be there. They will be there right as soon as it happens. They will be there with assistance. And what do you think people need if there's a hurricane or an earthquake? Well, let's think about that. They need the real necessities. They need water and food right away, and blankets. And CRS is there with that, thanks to all of us helping them. So right away, they take care of their food needs, because you can't really do much if they're starving to death. Agricultural livelihood. Now, in the world, most people earn their living in an agricultural way, don't they? Farm or something like that. So imagine when there's an emergency like a hurricane or something or a flood, what happens to that man, that field that he's been working on for years and he's been harvesting all his crops? All of a sudden, within a day or two, he has nothing. His livelihood is gone. Plus, he has to survive for him and his family. And CRS is there, number one, to give him the food and the water that they need, but also to show them when things get settled, how to rebuild, how to start his program again so he can start growing his crops. And the health and human services part is also very important because that has to do not only with taking care of their health, but also with taking care of things like families. And I saw that when I was in Uganda. One of the places I went to was one of the largest refugee camps in the world, 2 million people. And if you just, this is Uganda, and right here is the country of South Sudan. If you, real great map I'm showing you, isn't it? And the country of South Sudan is the newest country in the world that broke off from Sudan. And from the minute in 2011, when it was made a country, there's been fighting and rebellion and nobody can get along. And millions of people have been forced to leave their homes, to leave everything and become refugees, migrants. And of course, their borders aren't like ours, huh? A border over there is just you take one step over and you're in another country and nobody says anything. And here's Uganda receiving millions of refugees. So we visited that bitty refugee settlement, and I saw people living in plastic, quote, houses or tents or whatever you want to call them. And I saw the thrill that they had when CRS helped them to build a one-room home with a dirt floor, no electricity, no inside plumbing, no way to cook. They had to cook outside. I saw them walking miles every day with things called jerry cans to get clean water. CRS helped build a water for purification plant, and they were thrilled about that. They'd have clean water to bathe with and to drink. And I saw them lugging big baskets of rice and beans. And you say, isn't that nice? CRS gives them rice and beans. Yeah, but it's supposed to last them for a month. And they've got a family to feed. And then you start thinking to yourself, wow, how could they do that? Rice and beans, but somehow it works out. And I'll tell you one way it works out, I found out they all help each other. They all help each other. They see the model of CRS working for them and that kind of bleeds over, doesn't it? And they start helping each other with that. So the program that I do want to mention is that CRS has decided that we should end global hunger and malnutrition by working with all these organizations in the world to help people do that. When you see a project, for example, when in Uganda, I'd see a project like a brand new school that they built, there'd be a big sign, a big billboard with the names of many organizations, international organizations. And there would be the CRS logo that I have here on my shirt, the CRS logo. And then down there, you'd see a little American flag and go, oh, the United States of America gave them some money, as well as many other countries. So it's a real group effort to do that, to help people do that. And because CRS believes so much in our faith that we must put into action. Today, there are many ways we can help. Have you ever heard of the Rice Bowl? How many people have heard of the Rice Bowl? Okay, put your hands down. How many people used the Rice Bowl this year? Thank you. Thank you so much. I love to go talk about the Rice Bowl. I like to talk about it and preach about it because it always happens before Lent. And you know what, Anna? Where are you, Anna? I saw you. You know, right before Lent, every year when the Rice Bowl is going to come out, you know what happens? There's one organization, I won't say what it is, but there's an organization that comes out to defame CRS. And they really work hard to, it's just terrible. And they know we're going to be going out speaking about the Rice Bowl, and they want people to hear about how terrible CRS is. So the bishops will send us letters. CRS will send us emails and say, they'll send us packages, how we can handle that. And that our bishops from the U.S. Catholic Conference of Bishops will send out letters so we can use that. And so I like the Rice Bowl because I like to preach about Lent. And, it's a great resource for Lent, but you make it into a little bank and you put the money in, and it's really, kids really love doing that. Well, so do adults. The community that I was privileged to be talking about the Rice Bowl this year really went way out. And it was mostly adults, I think. And they handed in a lot of money. The money part, I have to tell you, CRS loves money. Don't you? Doesn't everybody like money, to collect money to do things? But the Rice Bowl doesn't bring them in as much money as that collection does. But the important thing is that it raises people's awareness of what's going on, because part of the Rice Bowl is a leaflet, and I don't think I brought it with me. I was going to show you. Is a little leaflet you open up, and there's a QR code, which I've had to learn how to use because, look, I'm old. But you do the QR code, and they show videos of several countries. Like this year was Guatemala and Somalia and a couple and somewhere else. And they show you, for example, people receiving the benefits of CRS. And so it's a wonderful tool to teach people about CRS, and also provides a lot of prayer experiences for Lent. I want to tell you, when I was in Uganda, I met a wonderful lady one day. We went from place to place, and they treated us like heroes. It was a little embarrassing. There were 5 deacons and 3 priests in our group. And our leader was a young lady. She was the one that ran our Global Fellows program. So there were 9 of us. And it was quite embarrassing to drive up to a little village or to a neighborhood and hear drums playing and singing. And she would turn to us, because she had made several trips before, and she'd say, "This is for you guys." And we didn't know what that meant the first morning, but then we realized when we walked into the village, they were going, CRS, CRS, clapping for us and singing. It was quite embarrassing, because I wanted to say, but I don't do this. I'm just here watching. I don't do this. When they said, don't say that to them, because they think you do so much. And then we realized we do, because we come back here and tell you about it. So they would come to thank us. And one time we went into this little village, and we met a lady named Rose. Rose was an older lady. She had grandkids, and she ran a coffee grove or coffee plantation. That was her business. She was a widow for many years. And through the efforts of a program called the Coffee Value Chain Development, CVCD, it's a program of CRS. She was helped to not only produce her coffee, they would help. This is the way you can grow it, and how to fertilize the land, and how to utilize the land the best way. But the best part for Rose was she was helped in getting her coffee beans to market, because she had been involved in her village with some man that wasn't a very nice fella. And what he had done was cheat her. And what CRS did was to help her to get her product to market. And she was so very happy with that, and kept mentioning how lucky she was to know CRS. I'm very passionate about it. I love it. I want to help CRS as much as I can. And I want you to also. I want you to be aware of it. I want you to go to crs.org and find out all the programs that I can't talk about tonight. I could go on all night to go and find out, especially about some of the hunger projects, to find out something very important that you and I can do, and that it's advocacy. You understand that. This organization knows about advocacy. You become aware, you begin to contact our senators and representatives, because today I checked before I came, as of today, that I can see there are 3 food bills in Washington, D.C. right now that have been already presented and are in committee, or what did one of you say, pending? Pending's a good word. That's what they tell you all the time. And there are bills that are possibly going to benefit the recipients of CRS in this way. They'll attach amendments and things like that for international food benefits for people. But that takes a while. Here it is, April. I don't think that those bills will be passed till toward the end of the year. So what happens is CRS has a whole program of advocacy, and to teach people and help people to learn how to convince our senators and representatives that we can't forget the poor of the world. And you can actually get kits and they tell you this is how you can send an email. I've done that, send letters. You can go to the Hill and visit them if, you organize that. And you can also visit them when they come home here to Texas, you can go visit them. So advocacy is very important by spreading the word and trying to use social media any way we can and to attend as many events as possible. Well, yeah, sister, you know what, sister? That's good. That's really good. Sister says you can donate online. And I want to tell you honestly, what I love about Global Fellows is we don't go out to raise money. It's funny, isn't it? You'd think that we'd go to a parish and say, now in your second collection today is going to be for CRS, but we don't do that. We do that mostly to teach, except for the Rice Bowl. Yeah, but you can give online. And I have a buddy that I met the first day of high school many, many years ago. Look at me, many years ago. We're old, he and I. And we talk, would you believe we still talk on the phone once a week? We talk, and he and I have solved every problem in the United States, in the world, and the church. Oh, we're so good. One of us should be elected Pope because we have all the plan. So one day I was telling him I was going to do something with CRS. He went, CRS, that's my favorite charity. He says, I have been giving to CRS for years. So yes, sister, all of you can go online and you can give money. I just usually don't tell you to do that. I probably should. So I'm going to stop. I'm going to thank you for letting me come here. I just wanted to give you an overview and not to get too deep into it, but I do want to end with something. I told you that CRS has a lot of resources for many, many programs, many things. They'll send you packets. You can do, teaching and all kinds of things you can do. And one of them was a whole packet about hunger justice. And there was a prayer that they said that they gave us, and they have prayer services that you can do. And this was part of a prayer, and it just really impressed me. And I want to just share these words with you as I leave you right now. In this prayer, we pray this. You call us to respond to the immediate needs of our brothers and sisters while also working toward just and lasting solutions to lead the way and persevere in our mission to build a more just world. May our hunger for justice remain until all creatures have a share in Earth's bounty and all people have enough nutritious food, not only to survive, but to thrive. Lord, give us a hunger for justice. Amen. Thank you for letting me be here.
Well, it's nice to be inside. Most of the food bank work that I do is pretty outside, and so it's always nice to be welcomed indoors. I'm reminded that this group is a big fan and very familiar with a large volume of parables after the bishop's story about nobody and everybody. And there's a modern parable that when my feet are in the soil digging fairly often, I think about. And it's about two individuals who grew up close to where I grew up in Dorchester, Massachusetts. I grew up in New Hampshire. And it is a boy named Benny and his uncle Rick. Benny had a pretty challenging childhood. His father wasn't around that often, but his mom was. And her brother Rick was in many ways the father that Benny needed. And throughout the years, one way that they used to bond together, and a good excuse for Benny to come over to Rick's house, was to plant the garden. And so every year, it's very cold in Massachusetts, and it can be a challenging thing to break ground every year. But Benny would come over to Rick's house, and he would pull out the shovel, and they would plant especially tomatoes every year. They would do this every spring, and it was a nice reminder that finally that long New England winter had broken, and it was time to welcome the spring again. Now, over the years, Benny fell in with maybe not the best crowd, and eventually he actually was arrested and he was put in prison. And this, it was a fairly long sentence. I don't remember exactly the details of the crime. But after several years, Rick sent him a letter in prison and said, Benny, I hope you're doing well, but I'm sorry. This year, the frost has lasted just a little too long. My hands aren't quite as strong as they used to be, and I don't think I'll be able to plant my tomatoes this year. And Benny sent him back a letter, and he said, Uncle Rick, don't plant the garden there. That's where I buried the bodies. And so the next day, several officers came and investigated. They brought their shovels. They found nothing, and they left. And Benny sent one more letter afterwards and said, well, sorry I couldn't be there, but that is the best that I could do. And so I'm at the food bank. I'm often reminded that we do the best we can do with whatever tools we're given. And so I've been given the opportunity to be able to farm for the San Antonio Food Bank. We do a lot of different things throughout the community. When we're thinking about ways to deal with hunger, we try to approach it in a couple different ways. So we talk about trying to provide food for today, food for tomorrow, and food for a lifetime. And we have a couple different approaches that we try to make that happen. Food for today, this year will distribute about 82 million pounds of food. And that actually goes to about 105,000 people every week. The San Antonio Food Bank doesn't just operate in San Antonio itself, it actually distributes throughout 29 counties, all the way down to Pearsall, all the way over to San Angelo, and we do a lot of different work throughout those regions. The food comes from lots and lots of different places. There are large corporate donors that end up giving us a lot of different foods, HEB, Labatt, some of the folks that are on our good list from SRIC, and some of the ones that are on the naughty list as well, I presume. And so there's lots of large corporate donors. There's also a lot of individual families that end up giving us lots of food through our food and fund drives. If you've ever seen our red barrels in front of an HEB or at a school or at a church, those are really important contributions for us as well. And some of our food actually comes from our own farm. We have about 75 acres, and that's split between 2 locations. 50 acres at Mission San Juan, which is a real honor that I'll talk about in a second, to be able to cultivate on. And then we have about 25 acres at our main facility at the San Antonio Food Bank. So that's our Food for Today program that goes out through our mega distributions that you see sometimes at large stadiums. Those also go through partner organizations. So churches are critical partners for us. Food pantries, schools, lots of different partner organizations like that. We have curbside programs where people can come to the San Antonio Food Bank and pick up their food. That's also true at New Braunfels. We manage the food bank at New Braunfels as well, so they can come and pick out foods through the pantry program. And we're really proud of how effective we are at pushing food into the community to solve hunger today. We also work on what we call Food for Tomorrow, and that allows individuals that we work with to get access to benefit programs like food stamps or Medicare. We think that those are really important ways for them to be able to save money, to be able to afford more food themselves. This is a strategy we call shortening the line. And the strategy that I think about most often and I get the most excited about is what we call our Food for a Lifetime strategy. And that's anything that we can do to try to equip the community to be able to feed itself over a long period of time. One way that we do that is through our workforce development training programs. We bring all sorts of individuals into the community to be able to learn in our warehouse, to get forklift certified, to be able to learn in our commercial kitchens, to ensure that they have the ability to go into restaurants and other food service industries, to be able to make good money, to be able to make sure that they're able to provide for themselves. And some of the individuals that we train are actively incarcerated individuals as well. We have a relationship with a couple prisons. Maybe we'll have a Benny of our own coming to our warehouse soon, who's able to get those useful skills so that after they're finished with their incarceration, they have a real good chance to be able to get a good job as they go in. The other Food for a Lifetime strategy, and the one that I work on most closely, is trying to ensure that regional agriculture is going to be able to be resilient to the problems of the time. And our approach in terms of farming, and I have the privilege of working with 3 full-time farm staff members and myself, but 75 acres is a lot. So what's really required and what we get a lot of benefit from is thousands of volunteers every year come and participate with us to sink shovels into the ground, to weed, to do the not so glorious work of agriculture. It's nice to harvest. That's a great day. It's great to plant, but weeding is an important part of the job, especially since we're an organic operation. We don't spray any herbicides on our farms. The pesticides that we do use are very, very minimal, and we only use them every once in a while. The approach that we try to take at our farm is to adapt to what we think the problems that are coming are. There's a lot of different farmers in our region that are really struggling with increased drought, increased temperatures, increased pest resistance for the certain pesticide uses that they have, soil erosion, extreme weather events, flooding, uncanny freezes. It's a challenging time to rely on the natural world when the natural world is changing under your feet. It's especially true if you need to make enough money every season to be able to push to the next season. And while you're trying to buy large pieces of equipment like tractors, like your next round of fertilizer, farming isn't really for the faint of heart. And so what we try to do at the San Antonio Food Bank is try to demonstrate what viable agriculture can look like for the next 50 or 100 years. And ways that we're trying to do that are adapting to include new crops, things like amaranth. Amaranth was a crop that was really important to northern Mexico and the Aztec tribes prior to the Spanish arriving. When the Spanish came, they prohibited its cultivation because they said that it was associated with certain pagan rituals. Potentially true. Also potentially, when the Spanish arrived, they had a real incentive to try to get indigenous peoples onto European crops. Amaranth is extremely well adapted to our climate here. It's really, really good at taking lots of heat. It is extremely nutritious. It produces a lot of different complex proteins. And we're starting to cultivate it again at Mission San Juan, which is pretty cool, I think, because if the Spanish colonists at the time found it, then they probably would have killed me. There's a lot of different crops that ultimately our farmers, but also our cooks and our eaters are going to have to adapt to. Amaranth is one of those, I think. Nopal is another, and you see nopal cacti all around. They're an excellent food source. They were used by indigenous populations prior to colonization, and they're still used all throughout San Antonio by current residents as well. We had a project in the fall this last year where we asked individuals from the community to bring a paddle from their favorite nopal plant. And we rooted it over the winter, and we planted it at Mission San Juan. And we have about 200 nopales down in a heritage group. And over the next several years, we'll learn which of these varieties are more resilient to extreme heat, which of them can deal with occasional freezes, which ones are tastiest, which ones are less likely to stab you when you grab them. There's a lot of different adaptation we're going to learn over long periods of time. And there's a huge range of different crops that we're going to need to be able to adapt to. And that's not just the farmers, that's also cooks, and it's also people who are ready to bring those items to the table. We just planted a 5-acre fig orchard at Mission San Juan that I'm very excited about. Figs at the missions are pretty impressive because there are versions, or varietals of figs rather, that are named mission figs. And they haven't been cultivated at the missions for a little while. Now, my 5-acre fig orchard is directly next to a 5-acre peach orchard. And I love peaches, they're delicious, but they're not particularly well adapted to where this region is going in terms of its temperatures. They really struggle in intense heat. If they get a late freeze, then because they bloom early, they can really lose a lot of different, they can lose a lot of their fruit. And if they don't get enough chill hours, cool hours through the winter, then they're actually not able to enter dormancy to produce good peaches. They're susceptible to pests, they're susceptible to diseases, but they are very delicious. So we planted 5 acres of figs, and we'll compare them to 5 acres of peaches. This scientific approach to trying to adapt to the environment that's under our feet is something that we try to do in agriculture, but as a food bank, I think it's also something that we try to do over time for those changing conditions as time goes on. Something that we are really approaching on our farm is the difference between annual and perennial crops. And this is something that SRIC knows very well. You can't solve all your problems in one season, and you certainly can't create a lifelong strategy in just one go. planting long-term food crops like fig trees, like nopales, potentially like peaches, like pecans, which have stewarded us in this region for longer than anyone can remember. These crops are totally essential, but they require years of maintenance. They require years of production. But once they're established, they don't require the same amount of work every season as a garden does. You don't necessarily have to weed for a pecan tree, but you do have to weed for cabbages. Now, we cultivate lots and lots of different annual crops. Over the last several years, our farm alone has been able to produce hundreds of thousands of pounds of food and healthy produce each year. But 75 acres is a lot of space to be able to grow with about 4 people. And so having trees as allies is something that we're really trying to approach. When we're thinking about perennial crops, there's other benefits to cultivating trees that we're able to grow besides just the food. We did a study with a group out of Stanford called the Natural Capital Project over the last couple of years that we were able to present to City Council last May. And it was to evaluate first, on the land that's available in San Antonio, how much food can be grown? And if you can grow that food, how much benefit does it do for environmental services? Environmental services is a big term, but what it generally means is for green infrastructure, things like trees, things like wetlands, things like grasslands, what other benefits do they have for us that we can quantify to be able to compare? If we were to consider building a parking lot or a forest, if you're trying to look at the economics, it's really helpful to figure out how valuable that forest is. So what this group out of Stanford determined was how much carbon can be sequestered, how much urban cooling can happen as a result of an increased canopy layer, how much water can be infiltrated to reduce the risk of flooding, how much green space can be provided to communities that might not have it. And these are particularly important metrics when we're thinking about planting trees, because the same areas that struggle with food insecurity struggle with a high rate of flooding risk. They struggle with particularly high temperatures. And so if we're thinking about planting trees and taking advantage of space throughout the city, the same areas that need the food the most are the areas that need these environmental services at the same time. So we did this really complicated modeling to try to figure out exactly how much food can be produced. And we looked at just City of San Antonio owned public land that was undeveloped and able to be converted. We found, based on the satellite images, that the city owns undeveloped 16,800 acres just in our city. Okay, if we were to convert that to urban agriculture, what good would it do us? And what we found is, well, there's different types of urban agriculture. Urban farms are one, where you're just growing annual crops. And then there are food forests, which are more interactive orchards that mix a couple different types of crops at once. On those almost 17,000 acres, we found that food forests could grow almost 200 million pounds of food every year. They could provide about 0.75 degrees cooling to almost the entire city. They could increase the amount of water that infiltrated to reduce some flooding risk throughout the city, and they could provide a certain amount of carbon storage, and I've forgotten exactly that number. Now, 200 million pounds of food is a lot. That same area as an urban farm, while it couldn't provide the same urban cooling, it couldn't provide the same carbon sequestration, could grow, according to what our model suggested, 1 billion pounds of produce every year on just city-owned land. Now, we have 75 acres. It's more modest, of course, than the 17,000 acres. And it keeps me busy. I'm glad I don't have to be responsible for all of it. But when we're thinking about the difference between annuals and perennials, the food system isn't going to change overnight for the better or for worse. And so we're trying to plant long-term seeds to be able to produce long-term solutions, ones that have co-benefits like cooling, water infiltration. We know that if we can plant the trees today, even if we're never going to sit in the shade of those trees, then that's the best thing that we can do. So our general approach in terms of providing food for a lifetime is, how can we create a green infrastructure? How can we create an interactive environment throughout the city that also provides these long-term benefits? And when you're thinking about whatever land you have access to, there's a lot of different types of agriculture. There's a lot of different things that can be grown. Cooling, services, hunger relief. These are all things that are available to us, especially if we're thinking about where that future is going over a long period. We know the climate is changing. We know there will be population growth. We know that there are specific dietary requirements that are coming. Certain ones that are culturally appropriate, certain immigrant groups. Maybe we can grow specifically crops for those refugee communities. There's an Apple Corps member, which is what we call our most consistent volunteers, who is a refugee from Afghanistan. And he is a pomegranate breeder. He was back home. Now he's a paralegal. He has been bringing us pomegranate seeds that we're slowly germinating, that we're going to begin putting in the ground in February at the San Antonio Food Bank next year. And we couldn't be more excited to not just be part of feeding the community, but to use their nopal paddles, to use their pomegranates, and to use their instinct to try to plant trees to facilitate the community feeding itself. And to us, that's powerful. It's not a one-sided relationship. Food comes into the San Antonio Food Bank from all sorts of places, but the seeds of that change to us also can come from anywhere, so that we're able to take advantage of that land to steward, not own, and produce more crops in the future. And so while my 300,000 pounds per year is not even close to 80 million, and when I brought 10 pallets of cabbages the other day, I was feeling pretty good until I opened the walk-in cooler and saw the wall of cabbages already there. But over the long period, at least we know we can produce these cabbages for sure on our own, and that the community is able to come, put the shovels in the ground, bring the seeds themselves, contribute to the genetic lineage of what those crops are going to be, to create a perennial solution as opposed to just thinking annually.
Wow, that's all I can say is wow. Buenos noches, good evening. My name is Dr. Ricardo Gonzalez. I'm representing the University of the Incarnate Word, and in turn representing the Sisters of Charity of the Incarnate Word while I'm up here. I'm the director for the Etling Center for Civic Leadership and Sustainability. That is a long name, but I think it's a long name because we do a lot of good work in the name of Sister Dotton and the Sisters. I'm here to kind of piggyback on what these two gentlemen have kind of started. You heard from Deacon talking about the big perspective of what's being done around the world. You just right now heard from Mitch talking about what is being done in a macro environment here in San Antonio. And really what I'm going to talk about a little bit is what we're doing here locally for our community. But as I begin, I was also thinking of a story about mom and dad, and I wear dad's pin. I just lost dad 6 months ago. Dad was a Vietnam veteran in 25th Infantry in Vietnam, but I remember growing up as a child in San Benito in the Rio Grande Valley. And mom and dad, we would always give whatever food we had to whoever was needed. And when we didn't have much, we were very modest back then. And I remember during that time, ironically, hearing the fathers talking about Nicaragua and San Salvador, I remember the migrants coming across in San Benito. And mom would always have sandwiches ready to give to them. And you know, so, mijo, go catch up to them, go give them sandwiches, go get them water. And ironically, here I am 30 years later, working with a pantry to continue the work of the good Lord that we do each and every day, and that you all are supporting, that we do each and every day. Thank you. So as I'm going to talk about the pantry, I want to start also by stating that the work that we do in the center and the work we do at the pantry, I teach our students because many of our young people, 16, 17, 18, 22 years old, many of them may not fully understand the role of Catholicism or spirituality in their lives, and they're still trying to figure themselves out. Well, what I've learned over the past 9 years specifically at the University of the Incarnate Word, that our students like to give, and they like to give back, and they like to find ways to do things. So I've learned the story of the Good Samaritan, right? And through the story of the Good Samaritan, we're able to teach these young people to give back and be good shepherds and to take care of each other's flock, because as mom and dad taught me, mijo, cuando ya nos vamos, when it's our time to go, Diosito, God is not going to be asking you, mijo, how much money do you have? What kind of car do you drive? What kind of house do you have? No, St. Peter and the good Lord's going to be asking, did you take care of my flock? And did you take care of your brother and sister on earth? So this is an extension of Sister Dot and of you, the sisters, and all sisters in here. Because what we do at University of the Incarnate Word is not unique. We have done a few things that I think are innovative and creative, but every college and university in San Antonio has a food pantry. Many of the school districts throughout San Antonio have a food pantry. What that tells us is that there's a need. And as I'm about to talk about our food pantry, I want to give you statistics, which I got a little bit from the San Antonio Food Bank, but I want to give you statistics on why we have these food pantries all over our community. And by the way, there are over 400 food pantries open today in San Antonio alone. So that tells you how much need there is. So according to the US Census Bureau, in 2020, nearly 25.7 million Americans reported not having enough food to eat during the week, just in the month of December in 2020. Nearly 14 million households with children report they sometimes or often do not have enough to eat on a daily basis. An estimated 4.2 billion meals nationwide were distributed between March and October of 2020 to support and address the needs of COVID-19 during that time frame. Now that's at the United States level. Now as Texans, we like to boast about that we're the biggest and the best. Well, sometimes it's not good to be the biggest and the best because those numbers show the frailty of who we are and what we do sometimes. So Texas, we rank number 2 among all states regarding the largest number of residents who are food insecure. Number 2. 1 in 6 Texans are presently living in a household that is moderately or severely food insecure. San Antonio, Bexar County, roughly 375,000 residents in Southwest Texas, which pretty much what Mitch and his entire crew do, are a service area. 375,000 people are serviced by the San Antonio Food Bank alone. 375,000, just really, truly try to comprehend that number. That is amazing what they do each and every day, each and every month, each and every year. So if you could please give a round of applause for the San Antonio Food Bank and all that they do. And people like sisters were talking about earlier, talking about immigrants and understanding the story of immigrants. And people always want to point fingers at, well, all these people, they can help themselves. All these people, they need to go find a job. Well, 46% of those who are food insecure are fully employed. So again, as sister was talking about, we need to talk about a living wage, not just an hourly wage, a living wage. So yes, people are working 1 and 2 jobs, and yet they are still food insecure. 67% of those served by the San Antonio Food Bank have income levels below the federal poverty line. 67%. And the data that I have, think about this, for a family of 4 in the year of 2022, the federal poverty level was 27,000. That was for a family of 4 in 2022. I just looked up today for this presentation, they moved it up to 31,000 for a family of 4. That's $8,000 a person to live for an entire year. So all this information, all this data, I'm a numbers person. I like to have numbers and I like to have data because that can frame, why is this important? Why do we have 400 food pantries in San Antonio? Why does every campus in San Antonio have, college university have a food pantry? Because there's need and because we need to do what's right. So our office, we do things with the spirit of Christian service. We're here to support others in the perspective of, again, not just Christian service, but to teach these young people about giving back to the community because we want them to be engaged community citizens when they leave our institution and to make a difference with social justice. Yes, we do follow the UN sustainability goals as part of all of our work that we do. And the food pantry is one of 35 different programs, services, and activities that our office does throughout the entire year. But the pantry specifically, the pantry came as a result of students. Students in our community realized that there was a need. If there is a campus anywhere in the United States that tells you that they are not food insecurity issues, they're lying to you. If they're telling you that they don't have homelessness on their campus, they're lying to you. Those things do happen, unfortunately. At every university, even Harvard University has those issues. So our students said, what can we do to make a difference? So our student government and various different offices, including ourselves, Mission and Ministry, noted up here, but our other partner, our other Catholic partner, St. Vincent de Paul Society of San Antonio, they came on board and they said, Rick, how can we help? I had built a relationship with them and they said, how can we help? I said, well, we need to show that there is a need on this campus before we can have a full-fledged pantry on our campus. So they said, well, we have an 18-wheeler truck we can bring on the campus and we can put food in the back of it and we can open it up once a month. And that's what we did for 6 months. And we did that twice a week. Once we started once a week, there was such a need, went to twice a week, we went to 3 times a week, and then it was almost there every day. And we demonstrated that there was need on our campus. And mind you, the need not just for our campus, but our community in 78209. Again, don't let the zip code fool you. 09ers, as people may think, Alamo Heights, they have food insecurity issues too. Nobody is immune. So we were able to provide over 8,600 pounds of food in our first year. As a matter of fact, just this past fall, we did over 1,200 pounds. We served over 1,200 households of food just this past fall alone. So as you can see, we started serving about 30, 40 individual members weekly. It rose to about 60 or 70. We're probably about 100 to 120 a week. And by the way, these are family community members. We build relationships. This is not just individuals that are coming to us. The thing that we like to do is make sure that we get to know our patrons, our customers. They are family, they're our brothers and sisters. I can think of one young man that brings his boys. He's got 4 boys, a single dad. He brings them every Friday afternoon. And because of them, we now have toys in our pantry and toys and books, because they would come every Friday and I started giving them my toys that my boys, and I have, my boys, by the way, went to Catholic school, so brownie points there, just kidding. But my boys went to Central Catholic and we had a lot of toys left over. So we had those toys in the office and books, and they would come and I said, here, take a book or take a toy. So now we have our students donating toys and books. So our patrons, our customers have something for their children to have when they walk away. But I remember every Friday they would come and the kids would be excited because they would get a book to go read for the weekend, and they would come every Friday for food for the weekend. So these are our customers. These are our community members that we're serving each and every day and each and every week. And yes, we do get some people that come one-offs and what have you. But what we like to do is we like to take care of each other. And the items I listed below are pretty much the high need items. And I think they correspond very similar to what the San Antonio Food Banks gets out the door. And by the way, Mitch, I think we had a pallet of your cabbages on our campus today. So I appreciate the work that you're doing. We actually had 6 pallets of vegetables and drinks that were donated to our food from the San Antonio Food Bank on our pantry on our campus today. And we got rid of all 6 pallets of food and items by 3 o'clock this afternoon. Again, that tells you in one day how much there is a need just in our community. So who are our participants on our campus? So on our campus, our participants are 95% of the people that normally patron our facility are campus affiliated, faculty staff or relative of faculty staff or student. So they are kind of part of the community. But we've also noticed that our visitors are also coming from the veteran community. We have a large veteran community on our campus. And they come frequent our location. Again, we're building relationships. And how do I know that they're veteran? Because we just start talking. And veterans are near and dear to my heart, not just because of Dad, because of all of my aunts and uncles and family members that have gone through the service. And if there's anybody in here that served, thank you for your service. And spouses and family members, also thank you for your sacrifice. We've also done surveys on campus. And we noticed that about 35% of our campus community at some point has identified themselves as food insecure. Now, I have noticed in trends over the past 2 and 3 years post-COVID that does fluctuate. And I know Mitch and I and his colleague were talking earlier that we can see trends during the year. So during the late fall, as Thanksgiving and Christmas comes around, as our financial aid comes to a close or near the end, or rent is coming up, or a holiday season is coming up, we start seeing a peak because their money has dwindled. Same thing during certain holidays, we will see a peak interest. So there are trends, in at least that I've seen on our campus regarding food insecurity, but we're trying to address those needs. I think overall in the entire United States, I think the average is 39%. 39% of college students anywhere in any college campus are food insecure in some form or fashion. So we provide more than just a service. We provide a home, we provide hope. You all help us provide a hope. And I think that's what we love to do, in the sense that we are glad to see the smiles of people that walk into our pantry. We're glad that we can provide the service. Yes, you'll see in a little bit that I have our hours posted, and in case any of you ever want to come by and visit or ever want to donate. We do have office hours or operating hours of time frames, just like a regular store would be. But we will also make accommodations where people will just call, or on the weekends. I'm fortunate that I live only 2 miles away from the campus, that I'll run back on the campus to open up the food pantry because there's a need that we need to. But the one thing that we have noticed that, as I was talking to Mitch's colleague earlier, is the food pantry, even though it's been on the campus since 2017, 2018, and we're in 2024, that's almost 7 years. If you were to walk on our campus, many of our students still do not realize that there's a food pantry on campus. And you might ask, why is that? Well, it's a very private issue. Being food insecure and asking for help, and more so if you're from a person of color or from a Latino culture where that is very hard to say that I need help, that's difficult to do. So as we were transitioning, I have a staff member that we just recently hired, and we had a makeshift food pantry in her back in our office, which is in a suite, and hers was, and we made the pantry in the back office where she is now. So what I did is because she was coming in, I moved the pantry from that location to the front of the office in a very open area. And our numbers dramatically went down of people attending, participating, utilizing the services. And I was like, darn it, Rick, big dummy, what were you thinking? It's a private issue. You put it right open in the big, wide open area, and people can see it. And that was the worst thing that I could have done. Once I removed and moved it up to the 3rd floor, our numbers went back up, because again, it is a private issue. And we don't sometimes think we need things until we need it. How many of you all just driving over here tonight didn't even notice probably the 20 or 30 food gas stations as you drove over here? Didn't even notice them. Probably don't even know that they were there. But if your car is on the échale, it needs empty, and you see that light go on, suddenly you're going to try to look for every gas station that you need to. I've learned that's the same thing with food insecurity. It's out of sight, out of mind. I don't need it until I need it. But now that I need it, now I know that it's there. Now that I know that Valero on Austin Highway, now I know where that gas station is now. So this is still a very private issue, and we're still working hard to market and let people, our students and our community, know about the pantry and what's available to them. But it's still hard because it's a mental thing. It's hard for people to open up themselves and be vulnerable and let them be available to that. But we're doing things like today's open mercado that we had. 2 weeks ago, again, with a partnership with the San Antonio Food Bank, we had a SNAP food stamp opening day to invite students to learn about what services are available. And we had 5 of our students sign up on that day. So we know that there's a need. We just need to continue to provide the services that are available there. Our office, because of the long name, also has sustainability. So some of the products, as we know, they have a good date, better than date, an edible date that we're always trying to figure out. They have like 10 different words or 10 different phrases to know if it's a good food or not good food, right? And I know Mitch can probably say, Rick, here's the whole way, what's good, what's not good. But we do have food that goes bad. So what do we do with it? We actually compost it. So we have a sustainability effort at the campus so that we put that back into the ground and reutilize that. We're working with our Sedesco, our catering on our campus. So all the fruits and vegetables that are cut every day are going into a bin that will then be composted to go into our composting efforts. We have 7 community gardens on our campus, so we can continue with the process. So again, we are thinking about sustainability efforts, and as I was talking to Sister earlier, Laudato Si, right? There's so many more things that we can continue to be doing, but it's a collaborative effort. And the things that I'm talking about is not just me. Yes, I'm the director and I have some insight and thoughts, but many of these thoughts and ideas come from students, come from our staff, come from our faculty. So it's a collaborative effort in what we do and how we do things. But what have we learned over the past 5, 6 years regarding the pantry? Well, what I know we learned, it's more than cans. We have diapers, we have socks, we have toiletries. I'm hoping to talk to local businesses about maybe donating or seeing if we can get relatively affordable cosmetics. Cosmetics, right? It's a self-image thing too. It's very expensive. I see what my wife buys and I'm like, oh my gosh, how much did you spend for lip gloss or blush? And I'm thinking, okay, if I'm food insecure, that is not my first thought, but I still want to look nice. So those are things that we also need to remember. Feminine products, they are not cheap. So those things that we try to make sure and take care of. We are trying to build relationships. We get to know our people, get to know our customers individually and ask them, what do you want? What would you like us to see? We are very fortunate. Again, we couldn't do things if we didn't have partners. HEB has been a very, very generous donor over the past 3 years. They've given us $5,000 to $10,000 a year in gift cards. And we in turn turn those gift cards into $10 to $20 gift cards to give to our students or our community members so they can go get proteins or dairy products. Yes, we do have a refrigerator. Yes, we do have a freezer, but we can't have steaks and eggs and milk all the time, right? So having more than cans and building relationships and providing hope. Sometimes many of our patrons, they just want to talk. And I will sit and talk with them and listen to them about their kids or listen to them about their troubles. We had a young lady today that just came in. She didn't take anything. She just spent 30 minutes talking to my staff. She just wanted to talk. And she said, I'll be back. And we know she will be back because it's about understanding that she now knows that she's built a relationship and she was trying to figure out trust. It was a trust issue that she was trying to build. That's why she was talking with us for 30 minutes. Again, trying to teach not just our staff, but our students about being good Samaritans and about being good shepherds. I'm assuming everybody was at church last Sunday and we were hearing the story about the good shepherd, right? So again, we need to continue to be good shepherds and taking care of the flock. And the flock does not matter about the color of the skin or the language spoken. The flock is the flock and everybody is a sheep. And we need to take care of each and every one, regardless of what they may sound like and what they may look like. Because in the end, color is not going to matter. Language is not going to matter. And we need to continue to do what we're doing. As I was sitting here listening and looking at all the work that you, SRIC, have been doing for many, 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 many years, it was almost overwhelming to me. Because to think of all the work that you're doing and continue to do to work as one community. And mind you, it's amazing and beautiful because the word that I can think of is coalition, right? As a coalition, we can make so much happen and do so much together as a coalition or a community of one. But if we try to attack these things individually, people just brush us off individually and they push us away. But if we combine like what you've done and what we're trying to do, we can make a difference with regards to hunger. We can make a difference in our own communities, but we need to do it as one. And understand that there's a continued need. As I was talking to Mitch earlier, understanding what's going on in the world today. The cost of cereal, the cost of milk, the cost of gas. All of the prices are going up for everything, right? And people want to blame this person and this person and that person. Well, rather than blaming things, let's find solutions and work together and let's see how we can leverage and work together to provide the needs for our community. Because there's still going to be a need regardless if we're yelling and screaming about the price of gas today, the price of gas tomorrow, and the price of gas next year. But if we can still work on finding solutions to help each other and take care of each other, then I think we can hopefully make a difference. But the most important thing, and it's wonderful again to stand up here as a Catholic, as a practiced Catholic, to understand this is us. This is who we are. This is what we're supposed to be doing each and every day. And for some of my students who may not be fully practicing Catholics, but they carry the name Catholic, that's okay, because this is who they are too. They understand that they need to give back in some form or fashion, if it's donating canned goods, if it's helping at the food pantry, if it's bringing in diapers, if it's talking to a senior citizen. That's who we are, and that's what we're supposed to be doing. And that's why I love what I do each and every day for the past 9 years, and not a single day has been the same day in the 9 years that I've been there at the University of the Incarnate Word. I've been in higher ed for 25 years, and I can say in 25 years, I have never had the same day happen twice. So I'm very privileged, I'm very blessed, and I'm very thankful to be before you. The last few slides are just contact information, but I did want to put this with Sister Dot, and there's a picture of Sister Dot. And some of you remember Dot. Dot had tentacles everywhere. She had disciples and people that she just moved, right? And it's amazing when we stop and think, can we have that same movement? Can I do the same thing that Dot did? And the answer is yes, because as I look in this room, you all have been doing it each and every day for so many years. By being persistent, by being a voice for the voiceless, by being hope for the hopeless, by being a visionary for the visionless. And Sister Dot, what will you do for others to make a difference today? Not tomorrow and not yesterday, because yesterday is past. And I want to leave you with her quote, because Sister Dot was a mover and a shaker and a doer. And I'm hoping today we are all re-inspired to be doers and to make a difference and to encourage our young people, our nephews, our nieces, our younger generation to also be doers. And hey, let's go to help with the food bank. Let's go help with the Catholic Charities. Let's go help with CRS. Let's go help with St. Vincent de Paul. There is help. There is need everywhere. If you have a high school teenager, if you have a middle schooler and they say, well, what are we going to do today? We're going to go at the food bank. What are we going to do today? We're going to go to the St. Vincent de Paul food pantry and go help them out. What are we going to do today? We're going to color pictures, and we're going to donate our colored pictures and sign names, and we're going to take them to University of the Incarnate Word, because the University of the Incarnate Word is going to attach those pictures with positive words to their toiletries that they give out to people that are food insecure. So there is always something to be done in ways that we can help, in ways that we never thought we could make a difference. So this is our hours of operation and when you can get a hold of us. And there's my contact information. I didn't realize it was in bright blue, but either way, you can find a way to contact us. But again, I am just doing one little part of what every college and university, I'm just blessed to speak here on behalf of San Antonio College, Alamo Colleges, St. Mary's University, Our Lady of Lake, Texas A&M San Antonio, UT Austin, Texas A&M College Station. Everybody has a food pantry. I've just been chosen to speak on their behalf, but we are all trying to make a difference, and we're all carrying on the work at each and every brother and sister and person of faith in this room, because we know that's what we're supposed to be doing. Thank you very much. Que Dios te guarda. Gracias.
Prophetic indeed, right? What a tremendous witness. This is the story of agape. And so now you have your questions at the table. I would ask that someone at each table, if you have cards with questions, that you bring them forward, please. Someone from each table. How many have questions? Let's raise your hand about that. Or comments. Okay, if you raise your hand, then if someone would collect those, or someone from your table could bring the cards forward, we'll give them to our speakers. And I'm going to give you a little homework for tonight. When you go home, go to your New Testament, look at the last, well, not Revelations, but the book immediately following the Gospels, Acts of the Apostles, the story of the early church, how after the outpouring of the Spirit, it came to life and what they became active in doing, how they began to activate their faith and make it real in the world, in their communities. Acts 2 and 4, last couple of paragraphs of each of those chapters. Description of the early Christian community. Thank you. Okay, this is for Mitch. Probably on a word trying to get one of those cabbages.
The question that we have is, how do you share information about growing food with local families and residents? And it's a good question about a lot of different families want to begin the process of cultivating themselves. We love gardens. We think gardens do a really good job connecting families to the process of growing food. We also know that if kids grow food, if they're involved in gardening, they're more likely to consume produce for the rest of their lives. So if a kid harvests a carrot that they participated in the cultivation of, for the rest of their lives, they're more likely to eat that carrot. We have a lot of different lessons on site. If people come and farm with us at the San Antonio Food Bank, then they end up getting lessons about cultivation on site. There's great resources on YouTube. There's a lot of great resources within San Antonio as well through different gardening organizations. Green Spaces Alliance manages a network of 30 different community gardens in town. We also talk about at the food bank that there's a lot of different ways that you can contribute to our work. One way is through voice, we say. So you can participate. If you come and farm with us, then you're able to share on social media. If you want to contribute food, that's a great way. If you want to contribute time by volunteering, that's a great way. And then also donations are great for us to be able to do our work as well. But there's a huge network of gardeners. There's lots of different debates and opinions. You'll never hear the end of certain plants, whether moringa is invasive or necessary for the survival of the human race. Gardeners love to argue it out, and there's only one good way to learn, and that's by killing some plants and having a couple survive so you can do it again.
No, I haven't. They want the name of that plant.
Oh, which one? Oh, yes. So the question was, what's the name of the plant formerly grown in northern Mexico that the food bank is trying now? And that plant is amaranth.
You spell it?
Amaranth. Amaranth. Yes.
Sounds like a perfume.
Yeah, in Spanish it's amaranto, and there's a native version that gardeners hate because it's really difficult to kill. It does really, really terrifically well. That doesn't produce a really good grain, but that means that the naturalized version, the one that's been selected for, is also really tough. So anything that comes from a weed is really generally a pretty good crop to grow. And in Latin America, amaranth has been grown for its grains. So it is this kind of central flower stalk that once it gets heavy enough, starts to tip over. You chop the flower and you can separate the wheat from the chaff, the seed from the rest of the flower. And it's just a really great crop. You can grind it down to be able to use in a gluten-free flour. You can make like an oatmeal type porridge with it all the time. So that's how it's used in the Americas. In Asia and Africa, different versions of amaranth are grown for their greens instead. So the entire crop is edible, and it's just one that we're really excited about because it's drought tolerance and because it can grow really well without herbicides or pesticides.
Thank you. I'm wondering if you have a recipe book. That's probably on the way. Now, we have another deacon. This one's for you.
Yes. Is CRS able to help with food scarcity in the West Bank? Yes, they are there. I meant to tell you, CRS would like to go everywhere in the world to help. And did you realize that sometimes they can't? You know why? What do you think? Because the government won't let them in. Sometimes they're in a country. I said there were about 100 countries, didn't I? I would love to give you a specific number of countries, but it could have changed overnight because events happen. There's an uprising and a new government takes over and they say, you're not welcome to CRS, but they don't leave. They'll go like, they weren't able to be in Ukraine, but they were on the border. That's interesting, isn't it? but they're in Gaza, they're in Israel. Yes, they're there. Are they helping with the food scarcity? They're doing their best. They're doing their best, like all the other organizations.
So I had a question, a very good question, and by the way, I appreciate being here. The question was, are there any plans to ask for collaboration with regard to cooked food for hungry students? That's a really great question. We have inquired about that actually. The issue is really with the food safety and how long food can be out and edible. For example, the food tonight. Let's say not all the food had been eaten. There is a time limit of how quickly we would need to disperse that food to anybody else if there was leftovers. And it all depends if it was cooked, heated. If it's sandwiches, then that might be flexible. The other thing too is if there's dairy inside of it, you have to be mindful. And then of course, there's always the issue with allergies. If there's peanut allergies, any other types of shellfish allergies, so or fish. So there are so many things that come into play with that. But we have, with our dining hall on campus, we've started having those conversations. So an alternative is we've asked our dining hall to provide food swipes. So let me explain this. Most colleges, universities, students have a meal plan and they swipe their ID card to get, let's say 15 meals a week. So let's say I have 15 meals a week. It's my Saturday and I've only used 10. I'm not going to eat 5 meals on Saturday evening. I'm just going to use my last one. Well, we've worked with our partner on campus to say, well, the other 4 are going to go into a food bank. And next week, 4 random students can each swipe one time to collect those 4 that I didn't use. And they can get a free or hot meal depending on their time frame. So trying to find alternative options where that is an outstanding question. And we do have some collaborations on our campus with the president's office, our office, and a few other offices on campus that they will bring me food knowing that it's immediate. We'll be able to disperse it. And anytime I've gotten leftover sandwiches from a catering event or leftover pizza, we've been able to get that food out the door and to our hungry students and even just other random students quickly. It is interesting when you stop and think about it, how much food we waste in this country. It is absolutely sickening, right? I remember it's been probably a few years, but I was going to McDonald's there on Broadway across campus, and I was hoping to grab a biscuit sandwich, and it was at 10:35, and of course they stopped serving breakfast at 10:30 at McDonald's, and I saw them getting all these trays of food and just throwing it away, of biscuits, of sausage and everything, pancakes, and throwing it away. And I was thinking, there's hungry students right across the street. There's hungry people just down the way under the highways of Broadway that could use that food. But there's so many rules and regulations and so forth and so on. But again, back to the word coalition community, if we can continue to work together to bring forth those issues of talking to our food partners and saying, hey, McDonald's, hey, Whataburger, hey, Wendy's, whoever it may be, if you can maybe cook to meal or to the order as opposed to pre-cook, because you're wasting a lot of food. And we should not be wasting food if we are the richest country in the world and we have so much hunger in this country. But thank you for the question. And we will continue to be innovative and creative and find ways to serve our community and serve our students. Thank you.
Thank you so much for those questions and for this interest. I was once a director of a small food pantry in a small town. People are very creative, and if you provide an infrastructure and the community becomes aware, people do want to become involved, and they're very creative. So in El Campo, in Martin County, was the 2nd largest rice producing county in the entire country. And we had thousands and thousands of Canadian geese fly in to the rice fields over the migration season. And of course, it was a big hunting season. People would fly from New York, from California, from all over the country to go Canadian goose hunting in Martin County. And then they had all these dead geese and they had to get on a plane. So they thought, what do we do with this? And when they knew they had the blessing cup, one of the treatment or preparation facilities offered to take all of them. They processed them, they froze them, and they brought them to the blessing cup, and we gave them out to our clients. So it didn't go to waste. The community came up with that idea. We didn't. So if you provide the interest, like the movie says, if you build it, they will come. People want to help, like the students want to help. So this is a tremendous, I think, a tremendous night to create ideas and to share ideas and to come forward. And they're all ready to have you get involved, I'm quite sure. So let's thank them once again for a big round of really great information tonight.
Hey, to conclude our evening, I want to express our appreciation to the catering company, absolutely delicious catering, to our event sponsors, the Congregation of Divine Providence, the Houston Dominican Sisters, the Sisters of Charity of the Incarnate Word, the Sisters of the Holy Spirit, Mary Immaculate, the Missionary Oblates of Mary Immaculate, the Oblate International Pastoral Investment Trust, and an anonymous donor, to Esther Ng, who was our award donor, to the Benedictine Sisters of Burney, to the Brigidine Sisters, Bishop Michael Pfeifer, the Dana Investment Advisors, Judith Lachrist, the Missionary Catechist of Divine Providence, Mr. Richard Cardis, Reverend Don Warren Brown, Dr. Larry Hufford, Sister Elizabeth, CCBI, to our guest speakers, Deacon Eugene Vesta, Mitch Hagney, and Dr. Ricardo Gonzalez. I want to express my appreciation to the other members of the board, to Sister Susan Mika and to Esther Ng, and to the staff and volunteers of the here at Oblate School of Theology, Xenia Rocha, Ruben Benavides, and Gavin Harrison, and to the volunteers, Sister Susan Mika, Linda Murphy, Nina Martinez, Laura Walward, and Robert McKinney. And special thanks to Anna Falkenberg and to Ruben Lopez, who are the staff of SRIC. Thanks to everyone. And since this event was being recorded and hopefully being viewed by Séamus, if anyone would like to come up to the mic and give a personal greeting to Father Séamus, I think you would appreciate hearing from anyone who'd be interested in doing that. This includes our event tonight. Thank you all for being here and safe travels home. Yes. Oh, also, if anyone would like to take any part of the table decorations, feel free to. The flowers. Feel free to take the flowers.
Hello, Father Séamus. I hope you feel better soon. We missed you. Bye.